Geek Hour. Today's conversation, and in addition to Stump the Teacher today, is we're talking about that amorphous topic that none of us can seem to put our physical hands on. What in the heck is breath support? But more importantly, how does your body mass distribution, how does your learning style, the injuries in your body, how does that impact how you feel breath support and your concept of it, so that it doesn't become either under or over muscularized? And then in the last 30 minutes we'll have time for you guys to start some conversations, ask some questions. All right, so you guys have been talking about breath to a certain extent in pedagogy, in advanced pedagogy. Tell me some of your thoughts from those conversations in class. Anything?
Well, we haven't had class. We didn't have class this week.
Oh.
And last week, we began talking about Apogeo and the lean.
Apogeo and the lean. Okay, well, we'll get to the famous Apogeo and the famous lean. All right, so tell me what you think your concept is of breath support. What does that mean? Because we're going to simplify it today.
Being able to use your air in the smartest way possible.
Okay, all right, what else? All right, that's good. What else?
I think keeping the inhalation muscles active during the exhalation.
Okay, that's one way to describe it. How do you physicalize that?
Leading from the solar plexus.
Okay. Everybody's going to have a little bit of a different way of approaching it. A lot of it we'll see in pedagogy books. This is not the point. The point is not how the pedagogy books describe it. The point is how do you learn how to feel it? Mm-hmm. And how can you use it so it doesn't become this unicorn.
Apogeo.
I found that really fascinating for me in my teaching style about how seeing where all my predecessors have come from, reading Garcia and all these crazy old pedagogues who say these things which mean absolutely nothing to anyone nowadays, mm-hmm. and to see kind of root through what my old teachers told me and figure out what the heck they were saying, mm-hmm. and how the heck I can explain it without getting bogged down.
Correct. Also, how it can be flexible, because somebody tell me how you describe breath support. We're going to get there in this conversation. How do you describe it, Mackenzie?
I can't think of a synonym for control that's better, but like a controlled exhale.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But something that probably is better than control.
That's all right. We'll take your language wherever it is. You describe it as you receive it. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
You can think of it as trying to strike a balance between staying as expanded as possible and sort of using as much breath as you need, but also maintaining as much as you can so that you can extend the life of your breath.
Okay. So let's do it this way. Yes, Stefan?
I just wanted to say one more thing, that maybe a way to not describe it, I think, is as an Italian word that is going to have no relation to anything your students know. Not to be shady, but...
Yeah, not to be. But also shady. Well, how about instead of coming at it from the cause, which we tend to do in pedagogy, let's come at it from the effect. Now, this brings up this, because what we've been talking about the last few weeks is, how do you teach your first voice lesson? You walk in there, you're fresh in pedagogy class, here are these notes, and you walk in and you sit down with your student and you're like, oh, I don't know what to say. So what are some of the tools you carry in your tool belt when you hit the room? So part of this discussion is, do you think that it is more effective with your students? You are not teaching them pedagogy, you're teaching them how to stand on stage and phonate and be free and emotional about it, and also be able to do the voice around styles. Do you think it's easier and better for you to start explaining the cause and let them experience the effect from the cause, or do you think it would be cooler and easier to show them how to produce an effect or go to a zone where they feel an effect and work your way back to the cause? What are your thoughts? Why?
If you're super analytical, if you go the first way, then you're going to get even more bogged down than you are. And if you're not an analytical person, then it's just going to shut you down from the get-go.
That's one reason. That's a good reason. What else? Why do you want to go affect a cause?
Well, as that person who is super analytical, so in my brain, I think that I want to know the cause first so that I know exactly how to do it. If I know like the mechanism, then I can activate that, except for that you can't. So, so then you're right, like you get really bogged down by trying to figure out, like, I know how this is supposed to go, I know, what's supposed to move, but I can't figure out the buttons, and now I'm frustrated. Whereas if I figure out how it's supposed to feel and how to do it, and then I figure out how it works, I guess, like technically,
Mhm.
then it's easier to connect those two. It's easier to connect the technical, what's going on, with what I felt.
Okay. How many muscle groupings are there in your thorax?
A lot.
Can you actively control all of those muscles? Can you figure out a way to actively control all of those muscles in such a way that they reach a balance and an efficiency of breath that lets your singing and your breathing feel organic? Can you?
No.
You have to go to the effect. You can't think about.
I literally, do this thing, do this. I want the internals to do this and the externals to do that, and then I want my I'm ready to sing.
I've wasted so much time trying to control my intercostal muscle. Like just thinking, okay, my intercostal muscles are supposed to do something, so let me like do literally try.
The internal ones go this way, the external ones go this way. I'm trying to make it all happen at one time. How many working parts are there inside your larynx? Probably a lot, relatively speaking. Can you, if you have a way, and this is open for discussion, if you have a way to actively figure out how to control this thing in such a way that you can control it to produce this in emotion, then go for it. But when you are dealing with the cause up front, moving towards effect, what you're doing is calling attention to things that are not well controlled individually. Mm-hmm. What you're saying to yourself is the act of singing is something that I can exercise, like shifting a car, control over, and once I exercise that control, then I'm going to be able to do that while on stage, singing high, low, loud, soft, laying on the floor in the fetal position. That's the question. Because what you learn in pedagogy falls into two categories. Ukul, and ukul is, wow, that is really neat. I just love it. I'm going to put that in this pocket over here because if I think about it when I go on stage, I'll be constipated. Or useful. Sometimes you can study the manner in which things work and you can become so obsessed with how it mechanically works that you lose sight of the product. And the product in the voice studio is the voice serving the music, the character, and the emotion. Mm-hmm. So now, let's go back to this. I got a simple definition for you right now. Very simple. Because it's not just that we want the voice to be beautiful. The way to answer this question is not, well, I got to make my diaphragm do this, and my rhythmoids do this, and my external and internal intercostals do this. It's about what I need in my voice to be able to get on stage. And what we've been talking about are things like the acoustic phenomena of ring, because no one's paying for out of tune. And if the ring form is present, what you feel is ring, you feel that present in your voice, then you know the voice is in tune, and you don't have to sit there with your slide rule and figure out if the partials are all lined up or the formants are all correct, because you feel that and the language is underneath and you know that that's the case. So here's and so we've been talking about acoustics. And so acoustics require a couple of things, and this is a very good beginning definition of support. Support is your body, and they both start with your body. Your body's ability to support a particular quality of air. Your voice needs sometimes more air, sometimes less air. If you're belting, it doesn't need as much air as it does when you're in your classical chest voice. If you're in the male classical chest voice and you go to belt, the belt needs less air. Here's one commonality. It all has to be moving fast. Mm-hmm. More, less, it's all got to be moving fast. So it is your body's ability to support a particular quality of air, i.e. speed. Meaning that when you add air to make the sound louder, if it's not moving fast, then your body's not doing its job. So as you increase the amount of air you're putting through the instrument, the body's ability to still support the speed is important. And that's one of your tenets of support. Second thing is your body's ability to support, I'm going to repeat myself, a particular laryngeal shape. I'm going to kill this marker today. Your body's ability to support some shape in your pharynx, because the air can't move fast through a tight, wide pipe. And so it's your ability to maintain a neutral shape in your pharynx. And then when you start shaping the pharynx for colors and other things like that, it's keeping it from getting into a position where it works against air speed. So those are two things that you can say very quickly define support for you. Now here's where we go with this today. Hillary.
Yes.
Come forth.
Each of us, in dealing with our voice and support and all those other things that we want on stage, we all start by coming at it from how we feel it in our body. Teaching largely starts from your own experience as a singer, because that's where we begin to build physical empathy. We feel it physically, somebody else does it, we go, oh, I can feel that in my own body when they do this, and when they do this, I can feel it. That's empathy, and we carry those singing experiences and our empathy forward into our teaching. It's probably more powerful at the beginning stages when you're still trying to figure out what to say, to start there. But if I say to Hillary, Hillary, when I sing, as I go higher, when I need more airspeed, I feel my body do this. And she goes, okay. I feel my ribcage do this. She goes, every time the same direction. If I don't consider the fact that my body and her body are not the same proportions, and that will have an impact on how she feels support in her frame, then I'm going to take my version of physical support and I'm going to put it on her, and she's going to try to do it, and her body mass is different than mine, and her shapes are different than mine, and she's not going to feel it the same way. So here's how I want to teach you a little bit about how to watch this particular thing. Have a seat. Thank you for being a demonstration.
No problem.
How do you know someone is not supporting a sound?
You feel it.
Compression.
Okay.
I feel a squeeze in the larynx. Or a
Okay.
squeeze in the core.
Like if you're watching a student,
Yeah, if you're watching someone else sing, you say, gosh, that sound is not supported. How can you tell?
you can tell by their body language.
Okay.
So, I mean, usually they're
Girl, you look
they won't be
fierce.
standing up straight. They will have some kind of collapsed posture. Most times, if you see singers with supportive posture, they're a lot more opened up.
Okay.
My student likes to lean forward. Like
Okay.
The farther, the flatter the sound gets, or out of tune,
Mm-hmm.
the forward her body goes.
Okay. Lori, come here.
The more
When your student first enters the room, can you take that thing off? Schmata. Take your schmata off. When the student first enters the room, watch. Hi, Dr. Guy. Suckle. Okay. If this is the way they walk, or this. Hi, Dr. Guy. Or this. Hi, Dr. Guy. Watch how they walk in. This is where her natural body is when she's resting all day long. See? This is her body direction. I can get my fingers right between her shoulder blades. This is not because she's out of shape. This is just because, for whatever reason, purses, cell phones, it doesn't matter what it is, this is her general body posture. If when she starts to sing, she does nothing in her thorax but stand there, then which direction, when she has to have energy in the body to support the sound, which direction is her body going to go? What's gravity going to do? Wherever she sits, the direction of her body is going to continue to go that way if she doesn't do anything in her thorax to offset her natural posture, correct? Yep. All right, have a seat. Hillary?
Hillary, just sit up there.
Unlike Lori, she has a bit of a different situation. She comes in, she's standing here with me. She starts to sing. Now there's two things at issue. Sister Hillary. Sister Hillary is now working out a lot with Rapmaster Zeke. And is building that form. There he is, Rapmaster Zeke. So Hillary's body muscularity is changing. When she first came to me, this was her general posture. But what would happen is I would put her on the bolster, or she was standing up to sing, and then nothing would happen in here. She would just do this. And she'd start singing, and then when it got loud and high, what did you do? Remember?
No.
I do.
Oh, yeah.
The neck comes forward. The head comes
Gravity,
forward.
excuse my hand, like that. And her neck would go out in front because she was doing nothing in her thorax to make the body do any of those two things up there. She was just letting the body be passive. And so when the body's passive, wherever the body mass is in the natural posture is during the day, that's the direction she's going to go. Now I'll tell you why this is important in a hot second. Now her body mass idea is changing, so she can feel things because she's got muscles down there now. So now she can actually feel what we would call the active appoggio, which is to lean, because there's something to lean against down there. Before I could have said, feel something down here, lean. She was like, okay. She couldn't feel anything. There was no, it wasn't that she wasn't sensorily able to feel it, there was just not a whole lot down there for her to feel actively engaged because there wasn't a whole lot in shape. Now it is. So I talk about appoggio and lean as something that I want the body to do. She actually has a sensation she can pair in her own body with my request. You understand what I'm saying? All right, have a seat. Because what I'm saying is two things. One, you think everybody's going to feel it like you. And two, you think everybody's going to feel. What do you do when you get somebody that doesn't feel anything? That's number one. You get somebody in the room, you're like, I feel like this, and I feel this, and I'm very acutely aware of all of these things, and she's like, nope. Nope. So what do? Lori, when you encounter a non-feeler?
You would give me
and support.
And support. I started feeling it when I would feel it when we went to like an eval, and you would make me feel things that you have to feel, like air on the roof of the mouth, where it was like, this is something you're gonna feel it, but it helped me to recognize like things down here.
Praise Ryan.
Or for me, I would find an absence of clench down low.
Yes. As we first got to know one another, I had to work from the standpoint of the cause. Air pressure in the roof of the mouth. If I don't do anything but feel that target, send the air into that target, it will produce a quality of sound that I feel more out here than in here. If I keep the jaw neutral, the neck and the throat muscles neutral, and keep meeting that target, it's going to produce a fairly substantial sound, whether I'm sitting or standing. She could feel that, feel here, because it started out as more hearing than feeling. And as she began to focus on that, other sensations began to knock at the door. She wasn't very well aware of them, and the more we worked, the more pronounced it got. And she is, how many years have you been studying me? 4, 5, 6, 8? She's still, every freaking lesson unlocks a new door. And she is probably the most extreme case of someone who doesn't feel like people feel. What do you do when you're trying to teach someone something and they're just dead set on listening? The whole time they're singing, inventory. Yeah,
just slap them.
We're not going to answer this today, but I want you to ponder this for next time, because we're going to start talking about next week. We're going to start talking about how to teach cross styles. What do you do if somebody is bound and determined just to listen? And you know they're just eating their mental lunch the whole time they're singing. And when they're in that mode of listening, you can empathetically see that they can't feel a bomb go off in their body because they're so far down in your head. Ponder that. We're not going to answer that until next week when we start talking about different styles of music and where the parallels are in our technique cross styles, because we have to have parallels. All right? So you have someone who is not a feeler. You have someone whose body mass is different, natural posture is different. You have to teach them something that is going to produce this and this that they do in their body. So, where that starts is how airspeed is made. When the diaphragm accelerates, it's coming this way, right? Mm-hmm. But you can use the water slide analogy. If you go to the water park, this the scary adult water slide is shaped like this. The kiddie water slide is shaped like this. Water moves faster through a narrower pipe than it does through a wider pipe. All of the muscles in your throat are designed to be constrictors by nature. If you do this, I'm going to open my throat. You have activated a constrictor. You've widened the pipe, so you're going to have to put a heck of a lot of air through there to get the speed you need. Mm-hmm. But by activating a constrictor in your throat, even in the act of opening the throat, you have impacted the position and the float of the larynx.
Yes.
You open the throat like this, you have activated a constrictor. I don't care if you think you're pulling your throat open or not. You have activated by design a constrictor, which means it's going to interfere with the larynx dropping to its natural position and doing its natural thing. Mm-hmm. If laryngeal stability is the bottom of your pyramid when we were doing our pyramids, and you teach open throat by activating the throat, you have already negated that particular thing right there, just in that one act. So, if neutral throat produces this shape, and you leave it neutral, then you're going to have a narrower pipe, not a squeezed pipe, a naturally narrow pipe, and your airspeed is going to be pretty speedy moving through there. Now watch what happens. If I teach airspeed, I'm going to make my appoggio. When I lean out, I'm going to drop the breath low, but then when I start to support, I'm going to lean out real low, and I'm going to try to maintain my expansion down here. Now watch. See what my ribcage did? As I activated and leaned down into those muscles, my xiphoid process, because my abs were pulling down on my xiphoid process, there are two reactions. The throat went like this, and then you heard my air like that. The xiphoid process drops, it slows the diaphragm down, slows the airspeed, and it changes the shape of the throat. So now I've got two problems. Kiddie water slide and slow moving diaphragm. That's going to take that phenomenon of ring that we feel sometimes here, sometimes in here. That's going to take that and it's going to lower it. That's a sensory thing you can feel. So I do this. The more I compress, the more I feel it go, whoo. Plus I need to go to the restroom after it's done. But that act right there, if that is the way that I teach support, is to maintain that as I go higher. If that works for you, use it. If it increases your airspeed, use it. There's not one way to do this. That's my whole point. Don't worship at the altar of absolutes in terms of your vocal technique, because someone's going to come in and be different. They're going to do something different than you think they ought to do. You better go with it, because if the sound is good and they don't feel it the same way, something's right. But if you think, no, you must do it in my model of support, then your whole world is going to be shattered in the process of that. You've got to be flexible and see what it is about what they're doing that fits with the anatomy, what the anatomy demands in terms of the singing. You understand? But if your whole idea of having air speed involves this, I must maintain the expansion of my rib cage. There's no air in there. My ribcage is totally and completely expanded. If I demonstrate, I mean, it's expanded as it's going to get. Now, there's a vacuum in there. There's nothing happening. But it takes air. But if my idea, it's not that the idea of keeping the ribcage expanded is wrong. It's that we tend to put the body in positions in an absence of air. Mm-hmm. We must create space.
Me.
We must create expansion. We must create posture.
Yep.
But the voice functions organically in the presence of air, whether that's air coming in or air going out. The voice functions organically as air. Air is the spirit. It's the life of the sound. Okay, it can't run without it. So if anything,
can you say that one more time?
Yes. Air. Yes. A lot of
You say that last part. Air is
organic. Air
you said life. You said
yes. It's the spirit of life. It is the spirit of the peace. Yes.
When you're not breathing, you're dying.
You're not breathing, you're dying. Exactly.
Dying.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. Sorry,
And that's also what connects the audience to you empathetically. You get up there and you show us your technique in the absence of air. Look at my technique, it's so good. It's really good. And you hold your air like you're singing. My technique is so pretty. But the audience goes, something's not right. Mm-hmm. looks really good, their posture and junk, and that arpeggio's great, but I'm not feeling it. Because you're holding the very life force that makes the sound. So to teach support in terms of a body position or a description, you may be right, but if you teach it and you don't allow the breath to bring it about, inhale and exhale, it's going to be a void form. That's why these two things are so important. So when you're teaching that ribcage expansion, it's not you lifting up and pulling out that you want to make the expansion. It'll make it. But it's the breath that stretches the body that brings it into that expansion. Yes,
So to this, you're saying there's no fixed position?
No. There cannot be a fixed position. Because if there's a fixed position, then that must mean that when you get on stage, you're allowed to get into fixed positions and not move for periods of time. It all goes back to not only the idea of breath support and singing, but it all goes back to the organic idea. The organic idea means that energy must move in, move out, in order for us to have freedom in the voice. Being controlled, being disciplined in vocal technique does not mean being held. But we think of control as this thing. It's just like breath. We talk about breath control. Your language is very important when you teach.
It sounds restricting.
Huh?
It sounds restricting.
Well, but see, we've been doing capacity exercises in the studio right now, and I tell you, the goal when you take it all in, these capacities, is just use it all in the phrase. And then you're like, okay. And then you get into the phrase and you're like, because you're not thinking use it all, you're thinking conserve, because I got a long phrase. So what do you do to conserve? Hold.
You're describing my lesson from this.
And oddly enough, when some people hold the air to conserve for the phrase, guess what the first thing is that goes out the window? Pitch.
Yes.
Only air raises pitch. Okay? Lord, air raises pitch. Now, it doesn't have to pass through a pipe this big, but if you want the pitch to rise, bring up the air pressure through the speaking valve first. Don't do 10 math problems. Just use the air. But all of this makes the idea of support less of a math problem, less of a fixed act, and more of an organic act. And that's what we're going to explore in the coming weeks when we start talking about styles and things like that. Is how do you describe that? It's very important in your first lesson that you look at how your students walk in. What is their natural posture? Like with Gabrielle, one of the things we've had to deal with recently and take into consideration with her idea of support is the number of injuries she's had from horseback riding. And because of that, she's had to do some things with the body that look at first blush as though she's going. But what she's got a compression in her spine, so she's got to get herself in a position first where the spine decompresses before she can feel anything in here, because all she's feeling is out, 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 out. Last week when Dr. Robinson was here observing all week long, a couple times I said something to the student that I said it, the student did it, and it worked. And he told me later on that afternoon, he says, if I had heard you say that and had not heard the student do it like they did it, I would have taken your NAPS card away from them.
The ultimate punishment.
But that's not because, it was just because the way I described it was unconventional. But if he hadn't heard it in practice, in the way it was done, in such a way that the ring was there, the speech was in speech position, particularly the belting. He just could not get over the fact that when he first came here, he thought classical voice and belt voice tech musical theater were this far apart. On day 2, he thought they were here. By the 3rd day, he knew they were here. They're stylistically different, but there are things physically, there are parallels there, and you have to find those parallels so you don't rebuild the engine for those things. Okay, so does that make sense to you? All right, so here's what we're going to do now. It's Stump the Teacher Day. You guys might want to talk about some stuff. We'll pick up on this next week. Who has stuff that it could be something you've experienced this week in your own singing, your own teaching, anything weird that happened this week in your practice that you totally didn't expect? Maybe in Rigoletto rehearsal, I didn't
I already gave her that phrase that you and I keep dying.
Oh yeah, yeah, that duet. I just discovered that my entire life I wish someone had just said, or maybe they told me I didn't get it. The instrument is one you got to keep it the same shape. You can't overspace it. Because I have this perception in my head of what an operatic sound is, or what I want to be one day when I grow up, or you know, who I want to sound like, and I've got to get that out of my head and just be myself.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you guys are realizing in your own teaching and singing, and that is Sound expectation, how you identify your sound, will cause you to manipulate your sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't know what your own natural voice, that's the baseline voice I talk about, if you don't know what your own natural voice feels like, not sounds like, but feels like, in your body, when you try to go from one opera form to another to musical theater, you will modify and manipulate the voice at the expense of this to make what you consider to be the sound for that. That's why we go back and we say, what are the beauty factors and all? So what do you want to pay for in a voice? You got to start there before you can identify what you want out of it. I like a voice that's pretty. I like it to spin. I want it to be clear. I want it not to feel like my head's going to pop off from my throat. All of those things. And then once you set that as your foundation, then you have to figure out what your natural voice is. Nobody wants to hear you come in and be Renee Fleming. And that brings about the second thing, which is if your sound expectation is something that's causing you to manipulate it, instead of thinking about that, look at the score and figure out how Verdi did that for you. Or how did Puccini do that for you? Because your sound expectation is coming about because you've heard somebody sing it that way.
Yep.
All right?
Yeah.
The text, okay, in this particular thing in Traviata that you were singing, is she's dying, it's the last act. You said dark was the sound expectation, and I said, how does Verdi make it dark? And you said, sets it in the middle voice. Yes. and it's what you're saying. So how about you just sing it in your voice?
Stupid.
And let Verdi do the talking.
Yeah, and then just putting the breath in it, I was just like, oh my God.
Yes. It's the same thing with something I hear a lot when I do musical theater stuff, and it's this idea of power belting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So young students have an idea of what they think power belting is. Normally it kind of looks like this. Ah! Something like that. Like they're being chased down. But they have a sound concept of power belting, and so they will make a sound, but they will ignore some of the basic tenets of musical theater.
Yes.
A, belting is not a loud thing. It's powerful, but it's acoustically not loud. That's why we have to wear a mic. B, you can't modify the language because it's musical theater. And C, you can't do 8 shows a week if you feel all your pressure right here. Mm-hmm. What they're doing is producing a sound expectation based on what they think is somebody else's sound. They try to put it in their voice. Yes, definitely.
All of this leads to my students accuse me of having hippie weeks, where I give them all lectures about how they're naturally beautiful and you don't have to be anyone but you and things like this.
I like it.
I have a question on the stump the teacher thing, though.
Yes.
But I don't want to pull you away from.
No, I love it. That's okay.
I have a student that has some hormonal problems and is pretty severely overweight. And I have discovered after about 2 years working with her that she has no sensation really of anything going on here in her body. Mm-hmm. And I guess kind of this goes right with what we were talking about. I have had zero success in getting her to connect anything. The only time she creates any sound is when she's in her deepest belt. I mean like tenor range belt. Yeah. And so I've actually pulled her off out of all of that and put her on high voice stuff to try to get her to develop some muscles. And I don't know. I have not had any success with getting her to feel anything.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Mm-hmm. One, I can understand why she can't feel things in her body, mm-hmm. because of probably the ratio of muscle mass to the other. Can she feel things in her head, in the roof of her mouth?
She's able to do some things, okay. For sure. Even just simple like bolster exercises, she seems to be able to connect that. Okay. And as she's doing the breathing, except for the fact that her body collapses severely. Okay. Up here, she's doing some things there that are not.
Okay. There's two things you can do, mm-hmm. and when you teach her next, surreptitiously film her.
I recorded it.
And send it to me.
He's prepared. Look at the face.
Want to hear it? No.
Not while we're live. But there are two things. There are two things that I would check. Mm-hmm. Two things I would do. One is check: is she square jawed or is she set back?
Square.
Okay. Is she wide across the face?
Yes.
Okay, that means she's going to have a very wide soft palate.
Like me.
Yeah. She's square jawed, wide soft palate. Do you think she has a wide hard palate based on the width of her nose at the bottom, or no?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay. If she has wide hard palate and a wide soft palate and narrow hard palate, and she's overweight, the palate is also heavy. Mm-hmm. And if she is square jawed, does she go here as she goes up, or does she just stay square? She goes here.
She goes out, just not severely though, not as much as some students I've seen. Okay. She has a tendency, I spend most of the lesson just getting her to because she tends to move into this posture as she sings, and so then I have to.
Okay, there's two things you can do, but you're going to have to start up here first.
Okay.
Okay, so think of it as a parachute. She has a very heavy parachute. All right. So what happens is if her jaw, she's real square jawed and she's just static, meaning that the roof of the mouth and the jaw are like a box, and neither one is overtaking the other. She's not set back or too far set forward. That's her neutral roof and floor of her house. The tongue has to move within that. If she starts to slide forward, that palate's wide, heavy palate is trying to lift, like that. If she starts sliding forward, that parachute goes this way. It has to. And not only does the parachute go this way, that's her landscape of the head, that is her biggest landscape. So when I'm looking at somebody's head to try to figure out different ways to talk about palate moves that fit their head and not my concept of palate moves, I have to look and see where is the biggest landscape in their head that they can feel. The biggest negative landscape for her is the fact that her palate's real heavy, and when she slides forward, which is taking her natural set and modifying it this direction, that happens. When that happens, then she feels the back wall of the throat engage, and there's a widening back there like that. And then she feels that sound go boom. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's breathy too.
And that's probably her idea of support.
Okay, yes, it probably is, because it's the same thing I always say, which is air pressure and muscular tension mimic one another if you're not hurt.
Yeah.
They all feel like pressure. So you do that with an absence of air, pressure. In the heat of battle, you just think it's pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I'm supporting. Yes. But it's that same thing I was saying earlier, which is if the form is absent air, it's muscularity, it's pressure, but it's absent air, which is the thing that needs to propel the sound. Now, here's what I would do with her, though, while she's on the bolster, to give her an assist, like we did when we were in Germany. I would come up to her, sit back in your chair. And as she focuses on, I'll show you some things that we can do with that palate, some different moves you can do, and we can do a little slide here. But as she starts to blow or sing, breathe in, exhale through your E. Give her that little assist down in the back. Now stand up. Let me show you from here. If she's going this direction and she can't feel anything in her body, then what you've got to do is give her an assist. Here are these muscles here. She's going to go, put my hands on you, okay, I'm sorry, like this. All right? You've got to give her a muscular assist the opposite direction. Breathe in. Listen to the sound of her air she blows. You hear it?
Lowered.
Now the reason that's happening is because I'm doing that in her back and lowering her shoulder blades. These muscles are stretching, and the xiphoid process is coming up, and her neck is getting longer, her throat's getting longer. That's what you're hearing. That is the sound of airspeed.
So are you, because I've seen you do this several times, and I've worked with some students, and with some of them it works immediately, but every now and again, and in this case, there's a lot of collapse happening here, but are you actually going in this way as well?
I've got my hands right on the top of these muscles here, and I'm literally just pressing down like that in a stretch. She will feel a big stretch in the back of her neck, and she'll feel that what's happening is I'm not activating the muscles of the throat, I'm using the muscles in the back body to elongate the throat without activating the throat muscles. That will not work with everybody. This is where this goes to. Thank you, ma'am. Primary and secondary zones of tension. You have a person who's singing and their head is out like this, and you keep going.
Like the water bird.
That's because this is secondary. You have to find the primary zone of engagement, and you gotta deal with it there. The problem is not the head. The problem starts in the shoulders. The shoulders are up and forward. If those muscles come down in the back, then the head will come over. So you've got to find in them. So she can't feel anything. What you're doing in this is you are serving as a fulcrum. You're serving as a fulcrum point, like a teeter-totter. You're the point where it meets like this. You're manually doing this to her, not because you want her to feel it in her body. You want her to feel the effect. As you do this, that air will shoot higher, and then she'll feel that palate kind of lift on its own to a certain extent. That's one thing you can do. With a heavy palate like that, I need to look at the video, and I can give you some more fine-tuned ways to do it in the jaw with air pressure. But the minute you kind of give her that assist down as she sits on the bolster, she'll tell her, don't do anything, but as she blows and you assist, listen to the sound of the air change as those shoulders go down. Because if she can't feel anything here in the body itself, if the shoulders go down, she'll feel her neck stretch. unless she just has no muscles in the neck, and I can't imagine. But she'll feel those back neck muscles stretch down like that, and then she'll feel that air speed up. That's a good place for her to start, I would imagine. But let me look at the video.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Question? Yes, ma'am.
All right, another student, and what something Stefan just said is what put me on this. Okay, so this student, dude, biochem major, so overanalyzes everything, yay. Also anatomically analyzes everything. 6'2", might weigh 150 pounds, wet with rocks in his pockets. he cannot. He's got a fantastic. Like, I mean, he's a tenor, but we cannot pop over to F sharp. Doesn't happen. And he's literally like Ichabod Crane with the body. Everything I have tried to do, every single thing, he cannot find a postural alignment at all, and he can't connect to that breath. So he's very narrow, super narrow. I'm stumped.
Okay, well, there's two things that have got to happen. And I was talking about this with David Walker earlier today in terms of conducting. We were talking about conducting in the choral fashion. And I said to him, when you watch a conductor, you need to notice whether or not that conductor holds their breath when they're conducting as the sound gets more energized. Do they hold their breath when they conduct? That's only the first thing. If they start holding their breath, what do you start looking at? You're either going to look at the gestures or the face. But you're not any longer looking at the entirety of the body. Right. That's because the gestures become a diffusal of their energy. So what's happening is he feels uncomfortable, he feels sensations building, and he wants to let go of that, or he feels uncomfortable.
He doesn't gesture. He's just like an S curve, one hand here, like the whole body is just like a weird puppet.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Does he have any muscle mass in his front body at all? Okay. Is his back body tend to leave his front body when he stands naturally?
What he tends to do
Does he stand like this, or does he?
Is this.
Oh!
Yeah. This is him because he's so tall.
He's so tall, he doesn't want to feel tall.
Yeah, he doesn't want to feel taller. So he's like this, and then when I try to get him on the bolster, it just...
Okay, here's what I do. I would stand him up just because what you've got to do with him is you've got to get some energy moving into the ground. When he's like this, the predominance of his weight is on his heels. So overcorrect him.
Okay.
And you can do this. Don't be afraid, by the way. If you've got a student doing something, do not be afraid to overcorrect to the point of stupidity to make a point. And don't be afraid, by the way, if your students overcorrect to the point of stupidity, that's how they learn. You take it, they're going to take it and run to the end zone with it. Let them do it. And you can say, come here, honey, back to, because it's the same.
Get back to mama.
It's the same thing. When we're breathing into these stretch boundaries of your body, how are you going to know where your boundary is if you don't take it there? Yeah. You guys are like, this is my boundary. See me working? You're going to have to do some crazy things with it. But what I would do first is as he sings, make him stand up. And as he sings his scales, make him go up on his toes. Okay? So because he now needs to feel some engagement that moves down into the floor like pressure and counter pressure rather than, because he's getting fixed.
Yeah, he's getting...
And all his energy is going down the backs of his legs and into his heels, and most of his weight is on his heels. So what you can do first, make him take his shoes off. And spread his toes like monkey toes. And then tell him to lean on his balls of his feet, press his balls of his feet down into his energy into his toes. What that's going to do for him, particularly since he stays up here a lot, is you're moving his sensory experience as far away from that brain as you can get it, baby. Yes, but he's got to feel something moving. He feels nothing moving right now.
Right.
And he's already slight, meaning that he probably needs a cheeseburger and he doesn't have a whole lot of muscle mass. So to try to teach a little slight dude with a high narrow neck and a high tenor voice, to try to teach him apagio in the thorax when he doesn't have anything to apagio against, you've actually got to move his apagio. This brings this up. You guys who start talking about apagio and leaning, you guys are like, that's from here to here, always and forever in the thorax. You can move, the word just means to, apagio just means to lean. Move the lean around. You can move the sensation of lean into the resonance. You can move it into the feet. Lean the feet down towards China, spread your toes, there you go. There's your apagio. And that may be his apagio for a little while. And then get him to do it, blow through his ear as he does that. You let him do that and let him feel how the air feels while he does that. And see if that doesn't make a difference. So start there. If it doesn't, ask me again and I'll come on.
I had some success, Gabrielle, with a student like that. Super, super thin, empty person. Got him on the wall. and did a bolster on the wall, the standing, and he hooked in.
Yep.
It was incredible because he had no feelings, and he doesn't want to have any feeling either. So that's the funniest thing. They're just like, meh.
That's the weird part of him too, because like we've tried like, standing up on the wall, but then he's so tall and he has nothing to support himself with, so he's like sliding up and down the wall, so he can't even stay on the wall and do it.
He would be one that you would have to get him on the fronts of his feet anyway, because the bolster's going to make him go back into that back body, and sitting back there.
And that's what he does anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to, but don't be afraid to move the sensory experience around. Nobody's going to be standing there ready to jerk your Nat's card if you try something.
So I guess picking off of Gabriel, I had a student who is so. Can you mimic what I'm doing since I'm filming? So forward here and tight here, and then does this.
Oh my God, that's so attractive.
But I could not, like, the shoulder would not. No. There's just no having it.
Okay, there are some people that have such a monumental amount of tension.
Yeah, muscular.
That you would need a rock blaster to get in there, but there is something you can do. Come here, Hilbrina. There is something you can do, and I do this a lot. And it's a good workout for the voice teacher, by the way, if you do this. But as they start to sing, put your hands into their shoulder blades like this, where they're flat.
Yeah.
Like this. And tell the student to lean back into your hands. Lean back all your way. Don't push back, just lean back. There you go. And as they lean back, you're pulling down with the shoulder blades, and they're basically forced into an open body position. As much of that as you can get is as much as they're going to be able to do.
Sure.
But that way, that tends to work better than you going, concrete!
Yes. That's exactly it.
Yeah. And this actually is a great workout for you.
So doing that on the wall be this a similar effect?
You can do a similar effect. Yeah, the planks on the wall, the similar thing. The planks on the wall are similar. However, you've got to watch if they're doing the planks on the wall for two things. Ezekiel and I talked about this earlier. Wall planks and floor planks. Y'all are like this. Let me do it here.
Oh no.
I'm planking my heels. You guys get on the floor in these planks and look at your shoulders.
Yeah. Crunched.
Yeah. And that's where your shoulders have to be. And now your energy is going out of your head, out of your legs, your core, and your shoulder blades are into your back. That's what builds strength of the singing body.
Yoga mama.
But if you have them on the wall, and watch this. Oh, let me do it this way. Sorry, attractive people. If this is where they are, and then you get your shoulder blades into your back, and then they do this. They drop the hips.
Yeah.
Then the core is not engaged.
Right. And it's just the lower back.
And that's just as bad. So they've got to bring the little ribs back over the body, shoulder blades into the back, little ribs back over the body, energy in the legs, energy in the hands, and energy in the head. That's bringing them into it.
Snaps for you.
Way to lecture.
I did not get the 3-minute one though. But that is an energized, fully engaged version of what you're trying to get them at. Oh, by the way, if you get them doing wall planks like that, that tension will start to release.
Okay.
What happens with people who stand like this, they can't to ask somebody who stands like this all day long to go, hey, posture. They can't do it. The muscles in between their shoulder blades are in flexion. When the shoulder blades come down in the back like that, they're in contraction.
It hurts.
Yeah, it's normal for people who take yoga. I don't have to force my head over my shoulders because my back's in shape from doing that one. But you can't ask somebody whose shoulders up here to all of a sudden go boom. You put them on the wall and get it started there.
Sure.
Builds the muscles in the back body.
That's the problem I'm having with my student in pedagogy, is that it's so uncomfortable for her because she's so used to standing with bad posture.
Yes.
That when I have her try to bolster, because I brought my bolster to my apartment last week for her lesson, and I had her try to do it, and she was so uncomfortable. She kept like bringing her head off the wall. I'm like,
Yes.
honey, you gotta roll your shoulders back. You gotta keep everything up here. And I'm like, I know it's uncomfortable, but I promise it's helping.
That's the case where you can do that same thing I did to you.
Okay.
But also getting them in a wall plank situation where they stand like this, bring the elbows in, shoulder blades in the back, lean forward, put pressure of your fingers and your palms into the wall, pushing out. Now, this is not enough. She's got the shoulder blades squeezed. Little ribs have to come back over the body so that you're not in this anterior tilt of your pelvis. And make them stand there and breathe through that for about 20 to 30 seconds at a time. That'll build it up. All right, hang on. Let me check my time.
3:55.
All right, we have time for one more.
Okay.
Go.
All right, cool. So banking off of that, I have a little sorority girl who stands around like this all the time and cannot get, this is this girl, air goes this way.
Yes,
Right?
I've had that.
I cannot figure out how on earth to get it to go out this way.
Air is life.
Air is life. Send it that way. But she speaks down with the vocal fry all the time. Has no musical inflection. It's a monotone voice. We have tried and tried and tried and tried and tried. I'm stumped again.
Okay. What I would do is I would tie it to the core and to the breath, okay? Because right now you're trying to get her to, your gesture was this, okay? And she's just going to do this, and she doesn't feel anything. So if you tie, and you can take your gestures are very important. They're modeling for your students. If every time you say place it forward, you do this, they're going to do this, and then you've caused this to no longer be in its neutral position. Your modeling is very important. If she's already kind of thin and sits like this, and you keep doing that, you're gesturing towards her posture naturally. You understand? So your energy gesture is moving into that gravity takes over posture.
Right.
So what you can do is you can take the core body, and as she blows, tell her to feel like right here in the center of her heart, that as she breathes in and blows out, that center of the heart expands this way, like this. Because she can't feel it because she's trying to initiate it from here up. So instead of you getting her to feel that in the effect zone, get the body to cause it to happen, kind of like the suction thing. As that body energy goes this way, that rib cage rises up and out, and that air is going to propel on its own, and she doesn't feel it there. She'll feel it in the body. See if that works to change your direction counter to her natural posture. Whatever gesture you do, if it goes towards her natural disengaged posture, it's not going to work because it's just more of this, basically. So you can take it a different direction. Remember that your body has planes up and down, back and front. You can work in corrective movement things in those planes. Don't always consider up and down to be your only plane. If up and down is your only plane, you're going to be like this. What about this one? What about this one? What about this one? You can work in any of those planes. Okay, make sense?
Yes.
All right, next week's Nerd Fest, we're going to start talking about how you teach from a classical standpoint different styles of music, particularly art song, different styles of opera, musical theater, particularly belt voice. We're going to talk a good bit about that next week. Thanks. Bye.